not easy to learn or demonstrate, so we are 50% successful in bringing Dylan's feral cats that he tamed diligently. Why is the question I want to know. Why? So he had two cats over there, Dio and Tom Petty. I don't know.
What was the first one?
Dio. I don't know where that came from
It's a
either.
band.
I rode back with Tom Petty loose in the car with me from the house, and Tom Petty was all over me and the steering wheel. It was an interesting ride, but he seems to be fine. He has decided that he is dominant over my cat. So my cat is having some deprivation dwarfism or something, because he's being neglected, he thinks, but we have not yet captured the other cat.
I think you need a trap thing. I have one, and you put good kitty food baby in it and trap it.
Oh, yeah.
That's how Carol always gives her feral. And then you've got it in the cage.
Oh, that's
You take it to your house.
Can I come get that?
Yes. I'm pretty sure Carol brought it back. Carol has used it that trap has been used for various purposes.
I have,
It does work for cats.
okay, good. That's wonderful. I have, Carol's cat cage right now that I've kept since
You
I
need her carrier, her carrier.
Yeah. But anyway, it was an interesting, Thanksgiving, to say the least. So I'm sure you've had equally interesting experiences, but I thought we could continue today with our look at how we unconsciously keep people from participating and joining with us. And I hope you have had a chance to see that video, everything you
Everything you thought you knew,
everything you thought you knew, and I thought we would start out with saying, what did you learn?
I did watch it, and I just learned, I guess, two things. One was the emphasis on loneliness, which I probably kind of knew anyway, that if you don't have good connections, you have to connect with something, and so the temptation is to connect with drugs or alcohol or whatever else you can think to connect with. But there was a de-emphasis on physical addiction that surprised me. Physical addiction, and that, I think it was mentioned when we started this, but the Vietnam vets, so many of them did use drugs heavily in Vietnam, but then when they came home, they didn't. And the physical addiction didn't last, or didn't affect. And about surprised me, in fact, I wasn't sure I believed it. So I looked a little further, and sure enough, everything that you read indicates that the majority of the people who used drugs when they were in Vietnam, that did not continue. They might have had other problems or other issues or whatever, become homeless or depressed or whatever, but the drug use did not continue. And that surprised me.
Yeah, me too.
I was very surprised.
I think that points out that the need that was experienced in Vietnam, there was a need there that drugs could assuage for a little bit at least. But when they got back home, that need was met in other ways. And if I remember this correctly, it was suggested that when they got back home where they had family and friends for support, that it was that personal interaction and that personal touch and that personal bonding that made it possible for them not to have that need anymore unmet. Does that make sense?
So it makes sense. It also surprised me a little bit because the Vietnam vets were not well received. So many of them were so badly received and endured demonstrations and endured really being unwelcome. And so I was surprised, but maybe their connections that matter, like their family and their true friends, did make the difference, so.
Don't you think it also might make a difference in how well adjusted they were before they went over there? That some of them who already had problems, they just got exacerbated when they came back. Because I know one man that happened to. He had a lot of family support. It wasn't that. He had a lot of friend support.
Yeah.
But, he could never, but he had issues with cocaine before he ever left. So I think that may be something that happens with people.
Yeah. I worked at Camp Pendleton, and the janitor was in Vietnam. He told me a story. They all have their uniforms, and they're flying into JFK, and they think there's going to be a parade for them. And the steward's going to say, take off your uniforms and put on regular clothes. There's going to be trouble down there. And they got off the tracks and went out to neighbors, freezes. And then had James Fonda, I mean, they had a tough time when they came back. It wasn't like 2 years of no purpose. There was no reason. No reason.
I was later in an airport, that must have been maybe 10 years ago. And some people walked by in uniform and spontaneous applause.
Yeah, right now.
And now and who can explain that?
Well, that was probably after 9/11. After 9/11, people got very supportive, I think.
Well, there was so much anti-war protest and everything for Vietnam. I mean, that was just all over the country. I know, my husband served in Vietnam, did 2 tours on the Seagulls, and he didn't have, he didn't drink, period. His dad was an alcoholic. And I didn't know him then, I met him in school later, but he, as far as I know, he never used drugs or anything. But it was traumatizing, I think. The worst thing that happened to him was, he was in his early 20s and his mom died while he was in Vietnam. And they special leave, he got to fly home. He was very close to her. And, to the day he died, I don't think he ever got over that. But what was worse for him was he stayed in the reserves, and when the Gulf War began, his unit got called up. And it was really, it didn't last as long, obviously, as Vietnam, but I don't know, the chemicals and the stuff that he did, after he got back, he was tracking other men who were in his unit or whatever, and they had all these health problems and psychological problems too. So I don't know, and he was, like I said, the Seabes, they weren't shooting people, but as far as I know, but I think anytime you go to war, regardless, it's going to be traumatizing just because of being away from home, being in such an alien environment and dangerous environment. So,
Yeah, some of these Marines, a lot of them that I worked with, they wanted to go back. Right? They just want to go back and be with their buddies there. They did not like being home. And so they would get whatever had to be done for them to fly
I
back.
wonder if anybody's compared Vietnam and so forth to the Civil War, where they didn't have the chemicals there.
Yeah.
All you had was a gun. Or even World War II.
yeah.
Yeah. Interesting to know. Because it seemed, those vets seem to be different than the World War II vets.
World War II was so different, the drug culture hadn't evolved during that time. They had cigarettes we would send it to them, and they were heroes over here, so.
Well, they were welcome home. I don't think we ever really welcomed them home.
We did.
Shasta, what did you?
A lot of and obviously I wasn't around for it, but a lot of drugs were also developed during World War II. Like Hitler was a major meth head. He invented meth. His scientist invented meth.
That explains it.
So, given our situation today, we, know a bit more about drug addiction. We don't have any easy, definitive cures, unfortunately. Experiments are going on with sometimes using one drug like LSD to help you tamp down your other drug addictions. There are some
Methadone.
people who say that if you have appropriate care during an LSD trip, you can dampen down alcohol desire and cigarette desire. I'm not sure that I believe that, but it was published in a scientific journal, so.
I'm not
But-
sure I understand.
Well, along those lines, Joanne, recent research is showing, aren't they, about the use of these hallucinogenic mushrooms, the ones that we've always thought were horrible, that under controlled medical things, they're able to get some of this stuff taken care of that you're talking about.
Microdosing.
Yeah, so
Which is
there's more work going on, but that's of a, let me cure you, let me give you another chemical to treat what is a chemical addiction. There are other avenues of support which we as a church use, like AA and NA. And we have in our being a welcome for those people. But I want us to think about the difference between welcome and inclusion, not only of people who need a service like that, but of those who come to visit. What's the difference between welcoming and inclusion? And a lot of what we think we're including, we're just actually using to welcome. It's not, we don't go that extra step of inclusion. So, do you know when AA meets here?
Yes.
Yes.
Thursday and Sunday.
Do you know when NA meets?
Friday and Saturday.
On Friday.
And we basically respect their rights and their need for privacy. That's paramount.
Yes.
But we should go beyond that. And one of the ways that has been suggested that we might go beyond is to leave some cookies or leave something for them to have. There's a phenomenon that's called deprivation dwarfism that I wanted to tell you about because I think it's such a neat story. There was a case that first discovered this when a woman had fraternal twins. She had a boy and a girl. Both were deemed as perfectly healthy and well at the hospital. She took them home, and the girl thrived and was growing and doing all the things you're supposed to do. The little boy was not. So they put the little boy in the hospital, and he gets over what it was, and this happened 2 or 3 times. And finally, some psychologist decided to make some inquiries, and he found out that the mother was giving both children adequate food and care.
We have some serious loving to do. This is Jasmine Lee. But we're so happy she's here.
She works on Sunday. Come and be with us, and she's been a member for a long time. Make us so, oh my gosh.
Good to see you guys.
legend out in the sky. Well, I just happened to, I work on Sundays.
It's good to see you.
I haven't forgotten any of you.
Practicing.
Even Greg.
Good.
We're good. I think you're listening to the sports, aren't you? I heard that. He's got an earphone in, he's listening to the sports.
Joanne, this is inclusion.
Yeah, the good Lord looks like Anthony.
So, yes, I was just across the street,
That's Jesus.
seeing a patient, and I thought, man, it's perfect. Just go sit in and.
Well, we want you to come back.
Well, I can't wait.
Okay.
I can retire and, yeah, so. Again, good to see
If
you.
you all see those magnificent scrapbooks.
The scrapbooks.
We have.
There's the lady,
There's the
that's the
scrapbook
lady,
lady
she
right
put
there.
our history into those scrapbooks.
That was so much fun.
Fabulous, fabulous.
So one of these days I'll get back, maybe, like, hey, how are you? Good to see you.
She also was a handbell,
Extraordinary.
She was a soloist.
Yeah, she was.
Yeah, she's a diva. That's right.
Actually, I can play airbell and see what it is.
But we miss you.
I miss you guys. I won't forget you. I don't.
Bye.
Thank you.
Okay,
Like Kathy.
Okay, does anyone have a guess as to what was different that the psychologist found? And he zeroed in and was able to treat the child.
The child didn't get focused enough.
yes.
The mother was treating the two of them differently.
Because she had a poor relationship with the father.
Oh, and she transferred it to the son.
Oh, get you.
Oh, my goodness.
But she was feeding the little boy and she was changing his diapers and she was doing basic necessities. But that she was not practicing inclusion. And we need, she did not cuddle.
Then why am I not taller? Mom wore the skin off me, jeez.
You got the attention.
I got all of it. She had nobody else to share it, to give it to, so I just had to hide more off me.
So I wanted us to think about the church as what we can do to be more inclusive, and we can watch that we don't use terms that inadvertently cause pain to other people by being a bell that says, you're not one of us, you're not worthy to be here. We are all equal, I think, in God's eyes.
I think, and that was something I've recently learned. Have you ever heard the term Christianese?
No.
So it's that language that we tend to use, people who've grown up in church, who know like the technical terms and things like that. Also going to school for theology, I kind of just got used to it in everyday common language. And I had a friend, and he grew up Catholic, but he hasn't been to church in years. And I was just talking about like having that grace for someone else, and he's like, "What do you mean by that?" You know, and I think it's just sometimes using a language that not everybody. I didn't realize not everybody uses. You know.
And we think when we have communion, sometimes if someone came in and had never seen those little beings, I have trouble with that.
Yeah, I do.
It looks like we're drinking the Kool-Aid.
I like the bread.
They said one too.
Or you helped that young man, that one, the last time.
The
we
one
had-
that Connie sent
Yeah.
to church, or invited, and he came, the one that she met at the restaurant.
Matthew
Yeah, I
Wade.
don't think he had ever, I'd forgotten to
I'm
get mine
sure
anyway,
he
so
had
he
never
gave me
taken
something to do.
communion and did not know, probably,
He didn't.
you know, because he said the one time he tried to go to church as a child, his father found out about it and nearly beat him to death.
Oh, my goodness.
And so I said, well, we have a church, and if you would like to learn, we would. I said, we would grandmother and grandfather you to death. Well, he reached out a week later. What was the name of that church? And he came. Now, he hadn't been back. I don't know whether we'll ever see him again, but
Well, I think he felt included that Sunday.
I think he
He
did
was
too.
on that, but
We had lunch
he
that
ate,
day.
he stayed,
Yeah,
and it was a social event in
Yeah.
addition to church.
it was
He's
on
from New
Lucy,
Hampshire.
and we had a lot of food.
He's from New Hampshire.
No,
No, he's
from
originally from California.
And the men in the church talked with him. you
Right,
know. And
right.
That helps young men when they
Yeah.
come here, if men will speak to them too, not just the women, you know, lovey-dovey. But I think it helps men feel accepted too.
Definitely.
Well, I think he felt very welcome here, and I hope
It's important.
that something will dawn on him. I need to go back to that church. I'm hoping, but I don't want to contact yet. I wanna give him some weeks, see what's happening, but there will come a day when I will say, hope to see you tomorrow, so.
But right now, it's such a good time to be participating.
Yeah, it is.
But you also have that teeter-totter, you know, of like, did she actually notice that I was here? You know, is she gonna because I think for me, and maybe it's just how I grew up, like you guys, for lack of like the overwhelming amount of questions and wanting to know me is what made me want to be here. You know, I felt like people were actually interested in my life and like, what's going on at work next week? And like, it was like the first time you guys had met me, and I was like,
you know, I think it's really important when people come for the first few times, maybe not the first time, it's a little pushing it, but to make sure that they're involved in something other than just the worship service. Not that there's anything wrong with the worship service, but I think the difference is if you're involved or part of some kind of a small group, and it could be Sunday school, or it could be Methodist women, or it could be
Bells.
something else, or
Bells.
it could be,
Oh, let's not say that.
absolutely. Or it could be choir, or it could be, a
all
group
of the
taking
above.
food to somewhere, or a group visiting somewhere. Just with some way to have a purpose for being there, other than just enjoying the service. That's for me. I think that's why I've never found a place yet in Arlington, because I've never found a connection that made me feel useful or
Like you
like
belong.
I belong. And I think as soon as people can connect with something, and that's part of that work, then that makes all the difference.
do you have his phone number? Is that,
I do. I have his cell phone number.
well then just like drop a link to a service and be like, thought you might enjoy this. And that way it kind of keeps it on the forefront of his mind without being like, when are you gonna be back? You know?
Okay.
So there are
Good idea.
lots of ways that we can connect using the internet if we can get someone to help us know which button to
We're all looking at
As
you.
your token Gen Z, I will happily, any internet questions you have.
push. Okay, that sounds like a deal.
I think his website, or our website that he put,
Yes.
is as inclusive as you can ever get. It's got so much there to look at.
And I always like that first little part, that's the written part.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Who
great.
does that?
Do you write that?
Good job.
It's-
You
it's-
like that? Wow.
Yeah.
I'm
It's just
impressed.
My
So if
son-
you link that to someone who doesn't know the church, that would be a good.
My
good
son
thing to do.
Chris keeps up with us, not just through me, but through our website. And he said, let me just tell you something, Mom. He said, anything that he suggests y'all do, do it.
Oh,
He said,
Chris.
he's the guy. He is the guy. He said, do it.
Okay, so let's not embarrass.
Let's do it.
You are appreciated, though.
Yes,
We're all
yes.
doing it.
You do feel included, right?
I think one thing to keep in mind always is who is in charge of this church. Now, we have trustees and we have a pastor, but if we can keep in our minds and our heads that this is God's church and not our church. It's our church to do the best we can with, but it is God's, and we should remember that as we do our work, whatever we do. Because Jesus was the most inclusive person that I have ever read about. And it was part of his daily life. It wasn't a big deal. It was something that, as he went through his life, he met the Samaritan, he met the tax collector, he met the lepers, he met the woman at the well, he met blah, blah, blah. All of these people. And too often what I tend to do is, just run in a nice little rut and not look and see. I
Go in a
don't
straight
see.
line rather than meander.
Yeah. So all of us have maybe a tendency to do that, and I think it may be human preservation that it's very pretty.
That sounds like shit.
So that the tendency is sometimes to see what we want to see and not to see what is there. If we see the need, we will, if we can make ourselves be open enough to see the need, we will more than likely do something about it, or we will at least be aware of it. But we have to really look. We can't just go around lying about life, but we need to be open.
Can I add a side thought to this thought? The friend I was telling about in the previous example, we were talking about Christian media, and we were talking about the Passion of the Christ, Mel Gibson's Passion of the Christ. And he was like, why do you think Christians don't ever make movies about Jesus' life, only his suffering? They never talk about his inclusion. They never talk about his embracing people. And I think maybe it's because it would challenge us in a way that we're not all ready for.
And some of us have a natural gift. I don't, I don't usually go up and introduce myself to people. Don't like to do that.
Oh, they had to put a child leash on me. I was like the prototype for that, because Mom said I didn't know a stranger. It's a little wristband connected to hers, and it's like a retractable leash almost.
But we can learn, and we can be at least observant. It doesn't absolve me of being observant. And one thing that was emphasized in the first paper that we looked at was how we have to be careful about the language we use. Have you become aware of any words that you use or any phrases that you use casually that could cause other people damage?
My grandchildren correct me when I do that. I evidently do it fairly often. And I don't mean anything by it. They know that. They'll say, Grand, that's not appropriate anymore.
The term implant, I'm really bad to use that for out of town people.
Yeah, me too.
The implants.
And you're not talking about that.
No, I'm talking about, it's, because I do, and I get on my little soapbox about when people move into town and try to erase Appalachian culture. And obviously there are nasty parts of it that need to be addressed and talked about. But there's also like these beautiful things and this resiliency of Appalachian culture that need to hang on. And I'll be like, and these implants with their Yankee washing.
Well, I got in trouble with my family, who's from here, a very Appalachian family, because I said, well, all my friends are implants, and they said, yeah, that's what's wrong with you.
I haven't heard implants except,
I've heard transplants.
but transplants is what I've heard.
Yeah, that's the word I meant, transplant. I didn't
No,
mean
mine
implant, I
is a
meant
surface
transplant.
level change
Yeah,
that
but there's
causes the
different
overall
connotations
structure
between
to
those
look
two
different.
I know, I meant transplant.
And how we casually talk about sexual orientation sometimes is
Yeah.
harmful. So we
I
need,
think that's the most offensive right there.
we need to be
We
careful.
don't know the new term.
And the racial terms.
And pronouns.
One that,
I like to try different styles of cooking, different nationalities cooking, and I found out recently you're not supposed to say ethnic recipes anymore.
Really?
That's
Wow.
racist.
One that
So,
I
I was
know
born in that.
now, I learned a number of years ago, but I had to learn that the use of the choice of lifestyle is a negative way, and it's an offensive of referring to people who are gay or lesbian or transgender, because they are not choosing a lifestyle, they are a person.
You're living a lifestyle.
It's not choosing like, I want to act as if I was an Indian. Well, I'm not an Indian, but I thought I was a number of years ago. I thought I was descended from Cherokee, but found out I'm distressingly white Anglo-Saxon. That ascribing choice to something that is not choice is really offensive.
And that is borne out in biology because homosexuality is found in a number of other species in about the same proportion as it is in the human species. And there are a number of genetic keys which are very important. And the one that I found really interesting was that if you are a younger son and have a lot of brothers, you have a much higher incidence probability of being homosexual, because some of the male bearing cells from the previous sons has leaked into the mother's bloodstream and has been viewed as foreign. And so she is likely to have made antibodies. So you could blame your mother for all of this. But there's just a lot that we don't understand, and we need to acknowledge our inability to have perfect explanations, and we don't need to have an explanation for this. It is not something that needs to be explained.
But I don't want to offend people with my language and my expressions, because I grew up in the dark ages, you know. And if that's interesting that you said, we shouldn't use the word choosing a lifestyle. The choosing part.
That would be like saying, you have chosen
to be a woman.
Be a heterosexual
Yeah.
woman.
Yeah.
No.
No, it's just the way.
Well, I chose to be short.
Yeah, what was wrong with you, Susan?
I didn't ready for that option.
She's a teacher. But Joanne, we do need to reach inclusiveness as, you know, what we're calling ourselves. It's more than just welcoming
Yes, and
people.
say hello.
We've got to do more.
I think it's finding a place for people.
Yes. It's not just
reason.
here, I mean, Jesus didn't just hang out at the synagogue, he was hanging out at the well, he was hanging out at the gate, he was hanging out.
He was hanging out.
He was hanging out, Jesus was chilling.
You don't have to go any farther. He was hanging out.
And he was present in the moment. I mean, he wasn't thinking about, well, what can I do with my tomorrow, or where. He was thinking about now.
I've decided I'm gonna be like Jesus, I'm gonna take naps and eat lots of snacks and overthrow bigger systems than myself. Like, that is my top 3 priorities.
Can I, so just popped into my head because I went back and forth here. except Jesus was thinking about what's gonna happen tomorrow when they came to get him from the garden. That's, you know, when we talk about being our Savior, that's where that comes in. Rather than have his followers fight for him, he says, this will just continue and continue and continue. This is the way we're gonna do it from here on. If this is the will of the Father, and I'm gonna, that I give it up, I will give up so the rest of us don't have to give it up.
That's because he was extremely generous and did not want others to suffer. So,
And can I, excuse me, you know how my mind goes all over the place. But another thing we talked about, phrases that we use. And without thinking, we just use them. And I started going over some of the phrases in my head that I use without thinking. I love it. Where's the deception? I suggest that maybe that would be a good exercise for all of us for next.
to think of some phrase that we casually toss out.
And we don't even, and I feel, gee, I'm lucky, so some of these are not too bad. Maybe that's why I get away with all the stuff I get away with.
One of the phrases that I hear so much in it now is hurtful to me, because I think, as you know, my son is an alcoholic, and we thought he was going to die this weekend, but he's okay. There are words that people can use when referring to themselves or the group that they see themselves as a part of, that are offensive when others use them. And that means that there's a great deal of self-understanding that goes into recognizing that. For example, an old friend of mine used to refer to himself like this: I'm just a drunk. I'm just an alcoholic.
Oh.
I never used that phrase with my friend, and I would often challenge, not constantly, that understanding. Yes, he was definitely an alcoholic, Larry. But one of his problems was that he saw himself as just an alcoholic.
Yeah.
Just a drunk. Yes, he was both. But
he was more than that.
But he was, and I think still is, I don't know, more than that. My son is an alcoholic. He's also a brilliant musician, writer, a very sensitive person, and so many other things, and all of that makes up who he is.
But you see, he doesn't believe that anything he did was any good.
Yeah, it's really, and other people can't give him the consciousness of his value, all we can do is try to remind him of it in the way we see it. I'll shut up.
But I think it's important that we recognize that since we are human, each of us has an unjust whatever.
Yes.
Because it says clearly, all we like sheep, every one. We each have our bad spots, I wish I could fix this about myself.
But I'm thinking of Jesus. He did not feel that he was just he would step out and speak. He would stand in front of people. He would do all these things that gave him a power. He would take that power.
He was not willing to be quiet.
Now, he wasn't just anything.
Are we just observers about this drama that's this human condition? Or do we have the courage and the conviction to live out what we should be doing?
I think that's one of the most important things about inclusion, is realizing that people, whoever they are, have worth.
Yes.
And to let them know that, gee, we would love to have you be a part of this because you're a valuable asset. I mean, but first of all, you have to know them. You have to know what defines them as
Or break bread with them or do
Yeah,
something.
I think about the people from across the street at the retirement place that had been coming to worship. And what do you do to include? Because we welcomed them.
And they
The
feel good.
The trustees made a physical adaptation that's very helpful. What is there something we can do that goes beyond that to make them feel like they're real people?
I think if we roll them back across the street, if we stay and chat.
Or walk with them
Is there
across
something
the
they could
street
do?
when they're going back for lunch.
Is there something they could do? We send them cards, but is there something they could do with their semi-limited physical
They have
capabilities?
time.
They have plenty of time.
And they need to
They
feel
might need a job.
I asked Buddy about how her week was or something, but I speak to these people. Yes, and that's it.
And that's good, but that doesn't give them something to contribute.
That they would be interested in church mice, or is that completely with
In what?
the church mice painting program? Like that's time and
We had one of those ladies to come over and join us for a short period of time. She was a potter. And she would sit and, you remember her? You don't? Well, she wasn't with us very long, but she came over and she would bring clay. And she would mold with her hands, you know, but she talked a little bit, but we really didn't get to know her. And then there was an event that happened and it caused her to have to leave and she never came back. So she wasn't with us very long. But that is one way. If there was someone over there, which is a different situation than Susie
Well, I was
was.
thinking that people feel useful, they feel like they're doing something, they're contributing something, not just money, but for themselves.
Along that vein, the thought that popped into my head is, you know, I don't imagine they're on the internet that much. I mean, maybe they are. But when like we have a UMW meeting or something like that, if there would be like a card sent over there or something somehow that they were notified, once they come, automatically we're gonna try to contribute to, if it's nothing else, then what are we gonna do with the money? Who are we gonna give it to? But that's just a thought.
Well, I think they would be,
I
I
would
bet they would enjoy signing the cards. You know what Emily started last year, and we said we wanted to do again this year. I think maybe we could ask them if they would be willing to sign a few cards, just Christmas love, Marcel United Methodist Church, you know, which, you know, if each of them would take 10 cards and put that, and then bring them to church the next Sunday. That would be maybe asking them to do something.
I think these are wonderful suggestions and may be really appropriate.
But
We need to respect people's needs and their understanding of why they are here. There are times in everybody's life where we just need to be with others. Where we don't, in fact, we need not to do.
or to have responsibilities put on us.
Exactly.
Well,
And
this is
so
about one really
we
responsibility.
really need to be offering opportunities,
Yeah. Well, that's
but
what
not
Susan's talking.
giving people a
Jobs.
negative understanding of themselves if they don't feel that that's the time when they can do things.
Yeah, I didn't mean to have them assign the task to do,
Well,
but
I did.
Just an,
but to
this is
have an
what we're doing.
opportunity to participate in something.
Yeah.
I know my husband's grandmother was living in a nursing home, pretty much, I mean, she lived to be 104. She was in the nursing home for quite a while. She was a wonderful woman, I loved her dearly, but, and so did my sons, but she had cataracts, really severe cataracts, and she couldn't breathe. And she had those cataracts removed and she could see again. And she took great delight in reading the Bible to the other people in the nursing home. And just, she found that on her own. But, you know, you just think about, what would you be willing to, would you like to participate in this? Would this be an important thing for you? It's just, you know, it can be an invaluable asset for someone who has a lot of time. But it is something that you, instead of assigning, you say, would you like to do this? Would you be willing to do this instead of?
And I think they do need help over there with finding activities that are meaningful to the people who are there.
One thing maybe we could do is have Methodist women over there instead of over here.
That's true.
And ask them, do you think we could have Methodist women with you all? And then maybe invite some of the other ladies to join us, you know, and have it in that big room downstairs where they have vespers.
And use the new name so that women who are not Methodist feel that they,
Or what is that?
Women United in Faith.
What?
Women United in Faith.
women
Women
united.
United in Faith.
See what that is?
I hadn't heard that
Women United in
expression.
Faith.
Yeah,
That's the language again.
yeah, there it is.
That's the language that makes such a difference.
Yeah, I've never heard that. I'm glad you said
That's the
that.
brand new name.
Joanne, I'm sorry to interrupt, but Ann Clark could not be here today, and I see that a lot of things have been taken, but there's a family at the Barstow Elementary School that she chairs.